Hello everyone, your pal 6-Speed here, and today we're doing a little update on the 19th hole. Unfortunately it hasn't gone too well. I've been really burned out with work stuff, really busy stuff like that, and for those of you who do not follow me on social media, you know that I had suffered a broken hand just before Halloween, so I've kind of been recovering from that. Anyway, so recently I got to do a little bit of work on my pride and joy, the 19th hole, and I have discovered that the vintage Mercury here has good compression on 3 out of 4 holes, but unlike the Meatloaf song, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. 1 out of 4 is still not all that great. So 1, 2, and 4 110 psi compression. Cylinder number 3 here has about 30 psi of compression. Coupled with the fact that it's not firing on 3 and 4, that is basically 100% confirmation that we have had a reed valve failure. So if we look very closely, not sure if you can see it too well. Maybe if I throw a light in there. Now, I'm not sure what you can see, but just that little bit at the bottom of the piston there, you see a little bit of bright aluminum. I know it's hard to see, but that's not a good sign. So if I bring number 2 to the top of its stroke, we do the same kind of thing. You'll notice if you look very close, can't even see the cylinder because, unlike this one, there's no shiny bits on it. This one got shiny bits on it, which definitely is not a good sign. And shiny bits means that something went through there, some piece of foreign debris, and dented it up really badly. My guess is it probably scored the inside of the cylinder. Can't even get my finger in there to check. I'm hoping the inside of the block is okay. It's very expensive to punch that sleeve out and press in a new one, because these sleeves are actually cast into the motor. So that's a problem. Well, I won't know how bad the damage is till I get it apart, but my best case scenario is that cylinder 3 will clean up with a honing, and we'll be back on the water in no time. I'm going to put these guys back in here again. Prevents any kind of more dirt from getting in. Not that it really matters much at this point. These guys, I'm a little worried about getting these side cover bolts off. I didn't realize that these ones are actually straight through, so we're actually probably in good shape on those. We'll hit them with some penetrating oil. So far, I've just basically taken off, starting to label the wiring. I have Tourette's, so hopefully I can read my own writing come 3 or 4 weeks' time. But right now we're just going to take her apart and hope for the best at this point. Probably going to take the distributor out, because this has a master spline inside of it. It's either missing or a spline or something to that avail. There's basically, it only goes in one way. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put the distributor back up. We're going to take the distributor off, because this cap and this rotor inside of here is very hard to find and very expensive to replace when you find one. Even a used one's a few $100s, so I do not want to mess with that. So we're going to take our vent tubes off, and these guys are actually screw-ins, so once I get it on the bench, I should be able to slide these boots back. See if I can get in there. The boots are actually in very fantastic shape. But I think that new wires and new terminals on the inside are in order, since these are now 48 years old. And happy birthday to the boat. It'll be 60. It's 60 years old this year. This is under all this grease. So there's a bearing up inside of here, and there's a swivel bracket here. I think this is the primary ignition pickup. and the secondary pickup is down in here. What the maximum spark advance is. Anyway, that's aside from the point. So this is the rectifier. We're going to pull this nut off here, pull the rectifier down, and I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and separate most of the wiring from this thing. Not quite sure how I'm going to do that yet. I might just pull the rectifier off and see if I can yank the switch box out, which is this little guy right in there where my finger is. You can actually see it better if we come to the other side. I've actually already yanked the starter. It's right there. That starter's been in and out like 4 or 5 times now. Choke solenoid lever is disconnected. We'll deal with the choke once we get it out, but this little guy will actually just pop right out of here. This is the plunger for the solenoid. So we should be able to just lift this guy right out. Switch box should come out with 3 bolts, so this guy here is the switch box. Once we get this front cover off, that should make things much easier to access and start tearing it down. My plan is to get this power head off. I'm not sure how. I got a buddy with a tractor, so I may have to schmooze him for a favor. Please. So anyway, I need the proper puller, which actually threads into this big thread right there and pushes down against the crank, but the lifting eye, when you thread the puller bit in there, the lifting eye will screw into the puller and you can just lift the entire power head. There's actually not much that holds this thing on here. I got to take the inlet line, the fuel line out. Somewhere in here there is some kind of drain tube. I don't exactly remember where it went. I think it went up where my finger is right there. It went up inside of here somewhere. Actually, I think I can see it. It's way on under there. That's if you accidentally flood the boat. So what I might do is I think I'm going to undo these 2 bolts in here. Take the wiring harness out. Coil's got to come out because it's attached to this lower cowling. This lower cowling, you can't actually, I don't think you can get it off with the motor in place, with the power head in place. So that'll have to wait. What I might do is I don't know, somehow I may shrink wrap it in or strap it in somehow. I have no idea. But we'll definitely be taking the back roads to wherever I'm going to take this thing off. Yeah, one thing is never take these off apparently. So, or any of these, just the center nut and that's it. So we'll leave the choke solenoid as it is. We'll take this guy off and this little P-clamp here. The wiring's actually pretty compact on this, so it's actually kind of tough to get at everything. I think these guys are actually, I don't know if they're soldered to it or crimped to it, but that coil ain't coming off without a fight, so I might just take it off from the switch box end. Okay, so in order to get this stupid plate out, so I've already actually removed the starter and the little ground strap from it, and that's from the choke solenoid and the little, I heard people call this a strut clamp. That's if you're in the electrical industry and you're using unistrut. I believe that I have to pull a coil off, which is 1 bolt, 2 bolt, 3 bolts as far as I can see. And once we do that, then this whole starter solenoid will come out, which means that we got to remove the starter, the battery positive input from it, and we have to remove, this is the key signal to it. This wire actually looks pretty worse for wear. I may actually come down in here and solder in a new piece. It has had some issues with it cranking. Yeah, there it is. Jesus, no wonder this thing's having trouble starting sometimes. Sometimes it just doesn't want to crank. I might do it right there. Look at that. Look at that. That is a rotten wire, people. I did replace a good chunk of the wiring in the external harness, but obviously this one is a little worse for wear. Looks like we're adding another thing to the list. Great. She's a money pit, that's for sure. This guy's very soft right here too. So yeah, I've actually loosened the switch box off of the front plate, and now all we have to do is we got to come over here we got to take these little clamps off that hold our vent tubes on. So there's one screw here, one screw here. But very obviously we are going to need to replace some of these wires here. I can just pick right into the insulation. You know, if you're going to do it right, you may as well go all the way. See, look at this thing's totally zonked too. Great. Seems like the deeper we dig, the worse this thing gets. Well, there she is, the front cover. All we did was we loosened our 3 bolts that held our coil assembly down and pulled it up out of the way enough to actually get it in there, or to get it out of there. It's kind of stuck down in there quite a bit. That little rubber bit on the ignition coil lead, that needs to come off as well. This is going to be a little tricky labeling the switch box wires, but I'm going to attempt to do it very gingerly. The only thing holding this guy on is this coil lead, so I'm going to attempt to remove it so I can just take the solenoid right out. I'm not really too happy about the way that the wiring looks on this thing, but I don't know. I haven't decided whether or not to just buy a new harness or whether to attempt to repair it. It's easier just to buy a new harness, but I don't know how great they are. I don't want to do this job again, and now is the time to replace it if it's bad. For overhauling the motor, if we do decide to go in that direction, which I'm cautiously optimistic here, then yeah, this thing's becoming a money pit. What can I say? We have our switch box out. We have our coil lead just sitting there. We have our wiring harness plug nice and open there, and our fuel inlet connector out. I may have to do something with this because it is rubbing, but there is a little piece of rubber here, so we'll see. I don't know. I did put that on after the fact, and I think there's a little too much angle on that, so I'll have to see what I can do. My next challenge is getting this stupid distributor out of here, because I can access all the bolts except for this one. So what I did was I loosened off the idle adjustment all the way, which I know it was all the way in. That's going to have to be tweaked. I know for sure that that wasn't correct. This is our, I believe this is our primary or secondary throttle pickup. So when this guy twists, it advances the throttle all the way open. So once it gets all the way to full advance, can't really pull it with my hand that hard, but it pulls it all the way open to wide open throttle, and this thing screams. I don't know why this distributor is so bloody notchy, but I'm thinking it's supposed to be like that. I think there's a magnetic trigger inside there. This belt is shot and needs to be replaced, but like I said, I'm going full bore. I may as well replace it, because it would be stupid to get stranded because of that little belt rather than actually fix it properly. So far, the stator wires actually look like they're in decent shape. I may come in here all the way up inside here and solder in some new wires. I don't know. We'll see when I get them out. They're actually in decent shape. Same thing with these. They may need a new connector on the end, and maybe I'll replace some of the wire, but we're for sure going for a brand new, yeah, wiring's starting to get a little soft here. So for sure, we're going to have to replace that. These are getting replaced for sure. I mean, they do work fine, but well, you can see how crispy they are from 48 years of use. So by loosening this off enough, I can actually, this thing actually touches the carb. I wonder if I can go down any further. I don't think so. There's a little Welch plug underneath there that's hitting it. But since I have to turn it this way, it's not as big of a deal. We'll give that a try. I just can't fit the wrench in there very well. So we're all done. She's naked as a baby. I just don't know what I'm going to do about this while towing it. Thinking I might just take this thing and plastic shrink wrap it and just take it real slow first thing in the morning or something like that. I don't know. I have to figure out where I'm going to pull it and how I'm going to do it. The only other thing that had to come out were the throttle and the shift linkages, the cables. The actual shift linkage is right here. That little slider bar there. We'll deal with that obviously when the motor comes out. You could probably get it off with enough. These bolts are a pain in the ass to get out. Here's our telltale stream. That's the last piece of the puzzle right here if I can pull it off. There we go. Just so it doesn't get forgotten. There's a handful of bolts that hold this thing into the midsection. Fuel pump is off. Carbs are easy. They're just 2 studs here and here. And the choke linkage and everything else. Once the distributor's out of the way, it's actually super simple. Now we're just going to have to deal with this long exhaust tube. Unfortunately, that's way up inside of there, so we're going to have to pull it all the way up and out. My flywheel puller / lifting eye kit, which threads in here, it should be here, I'm hoping, on Monday. I don't think I'm going to be able to pull it this coming weekend, just because Grandma's got to go back to Christina Lake. And lucky number 1 here has to drive her, so yeah, that's exciting. Anyway, here we are ready to rock. It's exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time.